Hello, welcome to our series of videos where we solve the questions in the WASSCE 2020 Dec Elective Maths Paper 1. In this video, we're going to solve the first 10 questions. Question 1 says that given that 1 over 8 to the power 2 minus 3y equals 2 to the power y plus 2, find the value of y. One thing we should notice is that, or we should remember, is that by the laws of indices, when you have a, 1 over a is the same as a to the power negative 1. So we can write the left-hand side as a to the power negative 2 minus 3y. And this is equal to 2 to the power y plus 2. Now we want to write both sides in terms of the same base, and we can use the fact that 8 is equal to 2 to the power 3. So we can substitute 2 to the power 3 for this. So 2 to the power 3 all to the power 2 minus 2 minus 3y. And this is still equal to 2 to the power y plus 2. Now, because we have, I was going to say because we have the same base on both sides, we can equate the indices, which is true. But let's simplify the left-hand side a bit. When you have the indices written in this way, they multiply. So 3 is going to multiply negative 2 minus 3y. And that gives us, on the left-hand side, 2 to the power negative 3 times 2 minus 3y, and this is equal to, again, 2 to the power y plus 2. So now we have the same base on both sides. We equate the indices, so minus 3 into 2 minus 3y is equal to y plus 2. And we expand to get minus 6 plus 9y equals y plus 2. From this, we get 8y equals 8. And therefore, y equals 1. So that's our answer, C. We can substitute y equals 1 back into this to verify that both sides are equal, just to be more confident. The next question is the square root of x plus 12 equals 2 plus the square root of x. When we have square roots, we normally want to get rid of them, and the way to do so is to square both sides. When we square the left-hand side, we get x plus 12. When we square the right-hand side, we get 4, which is 2 squared, plus, well, we can write the square root of x squared, which will give us x. And then we can write twice 2 times square root of x. Now 2 times square root of x is 2x times 2 is now 4 times square root of x. So this is what we get when we square the right hand side. If it's not too clear, I mean, this knowing how to square binomials this way is one of the techniques you have to know for this exam. But if it's not clear, you can write it this way, and then you first multiply 2 by 2. That's how we got the 4. Then you can do 2 by square root of x. That's 2 times square root of x. So it's represented in the 4 times square root of x here. Then you have square root of x times 2, which also gives you another 2 times square root of x. So if you add the 2, that's how you get the 4 square root of x. And then you have square root of x times square root of x, which is x. So this is the equation we have to solve, and we have x here and we have x here. You can think of them as canceling each other. Then we can group like terms. We have 12 here, we have 4 here. If we bring them to the same side, we can have 8 is equal to 4 times square root of x. That means that square root of x, if we divide both sides by 4, we get square root of x equals 2. Now if the square root of a number is 2, what is that number? That number is 4. Alright, the next question says, given that f is such that x goes to y as shown in the diagram, and f of x is a linear function, find f of x. So let me quickly draw the diagram they're talking about. The diagram is like this. You have x here, and then you have y here, and then in the x you have 3, 4, 5, and for the y you have 7, 5, 3. Let me write the 7 well, and then they just map to each other like this. So the question is, if this represents a linear function, then we are supposed to find that function. A number of ways to do this. If you observe that as x increases, so as x goes to 3, from 3 to 4, 4 to 5, y decreases. Y goes from 7 to 5 and then 5 to 3. So there's an inverse relationship between x and y, and if you know how your graph should look like, your graph is going to be slanting backwards like this. And in addition to that, or that also means that its gradient is negative. So looking at these functions, which ones have a negative gradient? You see that this has a negative gradient, this has a negative gradient, this has a positive gradient, so it's out, positive gradient. So we have two options, and you can check which one is the right one by just substituting values into it to see what happens. So you can put 3, x equals 3 into it. Let's put x equals 3 here. When you do that, you get minus 2 times 3 plus 7. This is equal to minus 6 plus 7, which is equal to 1. But we want 3 to correspond to 7. So let's substitute into this one to see what we get. We get minus 2 times 3 plus 13, which is equal to minus 6 plus 13, which is equal to 7. So the right answer is C, just by substituting or excluding some of the options because we want a negative gradient, and then substituting into the two remaining ones to see which one was right. That's one way to do it. Another way to do it is to think in terms of ordered pairs. We know that we've been told that this is a linear function, so it's a line, and that's how come we said we know that if we observe the negative or the inverse relationship between x and y, we know that the line should slant backwards. But the point is that it's a line, and in particular, if 3 maps to 7, then it means that 3, 7 is on the line. If 4 maps to 5, it means that 4, 5, this point, is also on the line. Now if this is we are looking for a straight line and we have 2 points on the line, then we should be able to find the line. We can find the gradient. The gradient of the line is equal to the change in y over the change in x. So we can write 7 minus 5, which is the change in y, over 3 minus 4, which is the change in x. And this gives us 2 over minus 1, which is minus 2. So that's the gradient of the line. Having found the gradient of the line, we can use one of the points, for instance 3, 7, and we can write y minus 7 equals the gradient, which is minus 2 times x minus 3. We simplify this as y minus 7 equals minus 2x plus 6. Simplifying further, we get y equals minus 2x plus 13, and this is precisely what we got in C. So that's another way of doing it. The next question is question 4. It says if NPR equals 120 and NCR equals 20, find the value of R. Now here, in at least 2 ways we can think of it. We can use the formula, but we can also use the actual meaning of NPR and NCR, but maybe let's use the formula today. NPR, the formula for NPR is n factorial over n minus r factorial, and the formula for NCR is n factorial over n minus r factorial times r factorial. So looking at the two formulae, they are quite similar. The only difference is this factor of r factorial in the bottom here. And in particular, we can divide one by the other. So if we write n, let me write this. If we write NPR over NCR, what do we get? We get this quantity over this quantity. Now I'm going to simplify this by writing A for this quantity. So wherever we see n factorial over n minus r factorial, we're just going to substitute for A. So we do the same thing for this side also. I hope you don't get confused by this. It's just an easier way to write things. So now for NPR, I'm just going to write A. And then for NCR, we have this factor of A. But this factor of A is now being divided by r factorial. So we have A over r factorial. Now if you have A over r factorial, this is going to simplify to r factorial, which is what we should have seen in the first place, that if you divide NPR by NCR, what you get is r factorial. So now substituting the actual values we have, for NPR we have 120, and then for NCR we have 20. So 120 over 20 we know is going to give us r factorial for a certain r, and that's the r we want to find. 120 over 20 is equal to 6. So now if 6 is equal to r factorial, the question is, which number has its factorial being equal to 6? And 3 times 2 times 1 is precisely the answer. So 3 factorial is what's equal to 6, and that's what we're looking for. So this is one way of doing it. Another way of doing it would have been to ask, what's the real relationship between NPR and NCR? And the relationship is that NPR is the number of permutations of R objects out of n, while NCR is the number of combinations. And in permutations, we care about the order. So order matters. But in combinations, we don't care about order. So that's what gives us the relationship. And I don't want to go too deep into that in this video, but because order matters, there are more ways of counting than when order doesn't matter. In particular, if you have something like A, B, C, that's one ordering of the 3 items A, B, and C. Another ordering will be A, C, B, and then another ordering will be A. No, let me start with B. Will be B, A, C. Another ordering will be B, C, A. So all these are orderings of 3 items, and there are even more. The ones that start with C, there's C, A, B, C, B, A. So for 3 items A, B, and C, we have 6 ways of arranging them, and these are the permutations. So one combination has given us 6 permutations. One combination of 3 items has given us 6 permutations of the same 3 items, and that is the relationship between NPR and NCR. What this is telling us is that for every one combination of 3 items, you will get 6 permutations. And that is where this factor of r factorial comes from. It means that if you want to count the number of combinations, you can first find the number of permutations and divide by r factorial. I'm going to end here. Maybe in another video I'll talk more about how to deal with this and how to use that approach to solve this problem. The next question is question 5, which says if x minus 2 is a factor of f of x equals x cubed plus x squared minus qx plus 8, find the value of q. So here we can use the factor theorem that says that if x minus 2 is a factor, then f of 2 should be equal to 0. So now let's find f of 2. F of 2 equals 2 cubed plus 2 squared minus 2 times q plus 8. Now we've been told that this is equal to 0. That means that 8 plus 4 minus 2q plus 8 equals 0. We have 8 plus 4 plus 8 is 20. So we have minus 2q equals minus 20. And q must be equal to 10. The next problem says that the 4th and 6th terms of a linear sequence, which is also an arithmetic progression or AP, are 9 and 13 respectively, and we are supposed to find the 12th term. We know, if we recall the formula for the nth term of an AP is a plus n minus 1 times d. So u4 is going to be a plus 4 minus 1 times d, which is equal to a plus 3d. And then u6 is going to be equal to a plus 6 minus 1d, which is equal to a plus 5d. Now we are being asked to find the 12th term, which is going to be u12, which is the same as a plus 11d. So how do we go about this? We can, because we've been told that the 4th term is equal to 9 and the 6th term is equal to 13, we can use these two equations to find a and d. If we solve these two equations simultaneously, we can find a and d. In this question, we don't really need to find a. It's fine if we could only find d, we could use it to find u12, because u6, for instance, is a plus 5d, right? A plus 5d. And u12 is a plus 11d. The difference between them is 6d. So if you could find d, then you'll find 6d, and then you add 6d to u6, and then that'll give you u12. So we can do that. We can eliminate a from these equations. If we call this equation 1 and we call this equation 2, we can subtract equation 1 from equation 2. So if you write 2 minus 1, what does that give us? 2 minus 1 tells us that 2d is equal to 4. Now, if 2d equals 4, what is 6d? 6d is 3 times that. So 6d must be equal to 12. Now, we've already said that if we add 6d, u6 plus 6d equals u12, and we have 6d being equal to 12. So what do? We add 12 to u6. u6 is 13. So 13 plus 12 equals U12. Now 13 plus 12 equals 25. So that's our answer, 25. The next problem is question 7, which says the gradient function of this px squared plus qx plus r is 4x plus 2, and we're supposed to find the value of p. We can differentiate this. When we differentiate this quadratic, what do we get? We get 2px plus q. That's the derivative. Now we are being told that this is equal to 4x plus 2. So what is p? Well, if we equate coefficients of x on both sides, the coefficient of x here is 2p. The coefficient of x on the right is 4. So from here we get p equals 2. And also q is 2, but we don't really need q now. So that's it. The next problem, question 8, says find the coefficient of x squared in the binomial expansion of q plus 3x all to the power 6. Now, what is the expression that has, or the term that has x squared in it? We know that is going to be this: 6 choose 2 times 3x squared times q to the power 4. In the binomial expansion of this expression, this is the term that is going to have x squared in it. This is one way of writing it. Another way of writing it is that it can also be written as 6 choose 4, or 6 combination 4 times q to the 4th, and then 3x squared. The important thing is that these powers must always add to 6, so 2 plus 4 must be 6, and then this number is always going to be 6 also, and then this is what's going to determine the 2 in this case. That's what's going to determine the power of x, or the power of q. And you may wonder, how come we have two expressions? And the two expressions, if evaluated, are going to give us the same thing. In particular, 6 combination 4 is equal to 6 combination 2. You can check the formula to see that indeed they are the same. But there's also another way to look at it, which is similar to the way in which I was solving the previous question that involved permutations and combinations, but we'll not cover it in this video. So let's evaluate this to see what we get. 6 combination 2 is the same as 6 factorial over 6 minus 2 factorial times 2 factorial. And this is equal to 6 factorial over 4 factorial times 2 factorial, which is equal to 6 times 5 over 2, which is 15. We get 6 times 5 because 6 factorial over 4 factorial is just 6 times 5. Remember, 6 factorial is 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. But 4 factorial is this one, 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. So if you're dividing the entire thing, which is 6 factorial, by 4 factorial, this cancels out and you're left with 6 times 5. So that's how we got the 6 times 5. It's what we get when we cancel 4 factorial out of 6 factorial. And then at the bottom we still have a 2, which is the same as 2 factorial, and that's 15. So this gives us 15 times 3x all squared is going to give us 9x squared. So 15 times 9x squared, and then here we have q to the 4th. So simplifying this, we get 15 times 9, which is 135. So 135 x squared times q to the fourth. But we are looking for the coefficient of x squared. So it's going to be 135 times q to the fourth. And that's C. The next problem is to solve this trig equation. 1 minus cos squared x equals 0. And x is between 0 degrees and 270 degrees. 1 minus cosine squared x equals 0. That means that cosine squared x equals 1. And that means that cos x equals plus or minus square root of 1, which is the same as plus or minus 1. So if cos x equals plus or minus 1, it means that it's equal to plus 1 or minus 1. So what happens when cos x equals positive 1? Let me write the plus so that it's unambiguous. Well, we can look at our quadrants. First of all, when cosine x is 1 or plus 1, what is x? We know that cos 0 is 1. So when when the angle makes 0 degrees with the positive x-axis or the x-axis, that is when we have cosine x being 1. And this is precisely the angle. This angle is the same as 0 degrees. So this is it. We could also say it's 360 degrees, but our range is between 0 and 270. So we stick with 0. When cos x equals minus 1, then again we can draw our quadrants and see. Here we are looking for, we know that the angle we know that the angle made with the x-axis should still be 0, but the cosine of that angle should be minus 1. So we are looking for where the cosine is negative, in which quadrants the cosine is negative. Now cosine is positive here and here, but it's negative here and here. And so this is where we can put it. If we want an angle that makes that is 0 degrees from the x-axis and negative, then it has to be in this quadrant between the second and the third quadrants. And this angle is equivalent to 180 degrees. That is, you move from here to here, that's 180 degrees. So we have 0 degrees and we have 180 degrees, and that gives us D. The next problem, which is going to be the last problem in this series, is to convert 7/3 radians to degrees. Now here, if you remember your formula, that pi radians equals 180 degrees, then you can go ahead and do the conversion. If pi radian is 180 degrees, then what is 7 pi over 3 radian? 7 pi over 3 radian equals what? And we can do some simple proportions to see what that should give us. Well, you can first think of what 1 radian is. So 1 radian is going to be how many degrees? It's going to be 180 degrees over pi. So we have to multiply this by 7 pi over 3. And when we do that, what do we get? Well, the pi's will cancel, and then the 3 will cancel 180, we get 60 degrees. So we now have 7 times 60 degrees, which is 420 degrees. So that gives us that. Now it's important to remember this relationship. You might remember it in different ways. You might remember it as 1 radian equals 180 degrees over pi. Pi radian equals 180 degrees, or 2 pi radian equals 360 degrees. But it's important to remember, and better still, it might be even helpful to remember where this whole idea of radians versus degrees comes from. It comes from wanting to measure angles by the lengths of the arcs of circles. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but when you have a circle such that the length, or let me put it this way, if you have a circle and you want to know what happens when you have an arc length of a radius, so you have the radius of the circle being r, and you also have an arc which has a length of r. So if this is an arc and the length of this arc is r, and you ask the question, what is the angle subtended at the center by this arc? That angle theta is going to be precisely 1 radian. So that's where all these come from, and you can use that to derive the relationship between radians and degrees. We're going to end here. We are going to answer the remaining questions in another video, so see you then. Bye.